this is Vivs here from Design Coder. In this video, let's talk about the structure of an Android project in Android Studio. On the left hand side, I have this area which is called project. If I collapse it, notice that everything disappears. If I click on it again, everything expands. And I have already expanded all the folders and files present over here so that we can walk through them. One of the folders out here is called map. Notice that it contains 5 different files and all of them are named the same thing, ic_launcher.png. If you click on one of these images, you will immediately notice your launcher icon appears here. Now this is the same icon which you would see if you go back in your app and go to this section under the home screen. Inside your file explorer, you would go to the place where your app is stored on your hard drive, let's say hello world. Inside that, go to the app folder, src, main, res, and notice that there are different folders over here. There's map, SDPI, all the way up to XXX SDPI as well. If you click one of the folders open, you notice there is only one image inside that folder. So each image is stored in its own folder. However, Android Studio aggregates all of them to show you together at one place. Now, if this is not the way you want to see them, you can always go to the project view here. Let me close this. And let's go to the left here, Android Studio, go to the project view, and under this you should be able to see it exactly like your file system stores those icons. Go to Google, and if you type map Android, there are some nice posts that talk about map versus drawables and using them for icons, etc. Now be sure to read about these posts in detail, and there are some launcher icon guidelines as well. If you go and say Android launcher icon guidelines, you'll get some nice ones from Material Design, I believe. So there's the one which says Icon Style Google Design Guidelines. So coming back to the project structure in Studio, notice that we have a folder called Drawable, which means anything that you can draw on the screen. Now this is where you'll be putting up icons and other types of XML drawables, and we'll be covering them as we go further. Now icons would be anything other than the launcher icon. The launcher icon goes specifically in the map folder as per the latest versions of Android. And the other icons are over here. You can add them in different ways, as in manually copy paste them, or you can use our plugin from the previous video, which was Drawable Importer. Right now, if you go here to the Drawable folder, right click, say new, and you can get this option. Take a look at that. That's because of the plugin we installed in the previous settings video. Here we have the icon pack Drawable Importer. You can just select that, and you can pick up any icon you want from this huge list that exists over here and just import that icon in a color that you want. Once again, these icons are shown here in Android Studio in an aggregated form, but they are stored on the file system under different folders. So keep that in mind as well. And the guidelines for icons apply over here as well. Let's start with the simplest file, which would be strings.xml. Now in Android, things are divided nicely. If you want to display text, or you want to put text anywhere in your app, then you usually add it inside strings.xml. For example, let's go back to our layout file, which is under res layout right here, and which would be activity_my.xml. If you open this file, remember that we have this text here that says hello world from Vivs and Design Coder. We can just cut that over here by the simple way, and we can go to strings.xml. We can simply go here and say string, give it a name which is compulsory, call it message over here, and paste our message over here. At the same time, we can go back to activity_my.xml. Now notice how I'm going to access that value over here. First, I will write @string, and notice immediately I get 2 suggestions, either the app name or the message. What we need is the message. And once we run that, well, you don't even need to run, it still works. The string is seen over here in the live preview on the right hand side. Now there is another easier way of doing this as well. Let me undo the changes and show you what would be the easier way of doing this. We cut that, we go back to activity_my.xml. Only this time I go here, hit option, return, or alt enter, and notice this option that says extract string resource. In other words, what I just did manually is what Android Studio lets me do automatically. So just click that, and notice it says which folder do you want to put it inside. There is a values folder here, which is general here. So I'm going to select that values folder, and we will talk about what this W820DP is later. So here in strings.xml, I have my resource name. I need to just specify the name of this file. I just write the same thing, message here for the name, and I click OK. Now notice what happens immediately. Here in Android text part, we have @string/message. And if you go to our strings.xml file, you notice here we have the same thing which we did manually earlier, which Android Studio lets us do by using extract strings. So the idea is to keep all the text inside strings.xml in a neat, nice, organized fashion, and at the same time provide different versions of the text for different languages. For example, let's say you want to display the same message in German. In that case, you would make a separate strings.xml file with a German extension, and inside that you would provide the translation. And we'll be talking more about this as we go further, because that's a slightly complex topic which is called providing alternative resources, if you're interested to know about it. So just for the curious people out here, if you Google Android provide alternate resources, you'll see this tutorial called localizing with resources, and this is where they talk about how to provide different strings for different languages. So the next question that you probably have is, how do I access this value in code from my activity.java file? For that, if you come back to my activity.java, you have this method called getString. Notice that it takes an integer called resource ID. In Android, all these things, images, icons, strings, colors, styles, they're considered as resources, and each resource has an ID. And to access this, you will simply say r.string.message. So you can store this value into, say, string message, and you can display that inside a toast by using our template, that is toast and tab my activity.this, and you can just print the message over here. Now if you run the app, you will definitely see the message, right? Let's try that. So there's our app running. It says hello world from Vivs and designcoder.io. What is R? What is this string? Why did we simply not write something like message and try to get that value? For this, we need to know that Android manages everything inside a class called R. Now that class is not seen over here. Let's go to a different view and you will see that class. Currently, notice that we are in the Android view at the top. If you change this to project, then we have a very different view over here. So let me show you. There's app, and there are a couple of other folders that we did not see earlier. So we go to app here, we go to build, generated, source, R, debug, and inside this debug folder, we have two different folders. Notice that the base folder says generated. Now all this code is generated by Android without your intervention. So here, if you go inside this folder, which is io.designcoder.helloworld, you see an R. If you open this folder, you see another R. Now there is an R file for every project and library. So here, the android.support.v7.appcompat R file belongs to the library appcompat, which we are using in our app. This R file is ours. Now if you open this file, you will see a lot of stuff here, but basically there's just public static final ints everywhere. If you notice that it's a public final class, which means you cannot extend it, and there is the class R over here. Inside that, look at this, there are subclasses like anim, attr, etc. So there's a huge list of values over here that are stored. Let's try to find R value, which is a string, right? Because we were saying r.string, so I'm sure string must be here somewhere. So notice that inside the class R, we have a public static final class called string with a small string. Now inside this, we should definitely find our value, and bam, take a look at that. There is message which has this value OX7F0, which is a hexadecimal value given to it to uniquely identify it. Now this value is managed by Android. Obviously, you don't have to worry about it. Notice that we have a value for app name as well. So each item you add will be placed under one of these classes inside R, and they will have a unique value. For example, our layout file, which is activity_my.xml, is under this class called layout. Inside layout, you will find that class, and there you go. Activity_my has a unique value as well. So you can access it like you did here by saying r.layout.activity_my, and this is how the resource system works in Android. Notice how it says files under this build folder are generated and should not be edited. Even if you tried editing, that change won't be persistent, because the next time you compile your app, Android will once again generate this file. Let me show you what I mean. If I go to strings.xml, let's say I add another string here called string, give it a name, say test, and let's wrap that string up. So I simply say this is a test. Now remember that I just saved it over here. So go back to hello world.r. If you go down to the string file, and if you try to run our app at the top by hitting the run button over here, you would immediately notice that the test value pops up as well with its unique ID, which is why this file is automatically managed. Let's talk about this section called Gradle scripts. Notice that there are several files inside, especially two of them with the same name. One of them says module app, the other one says project hello world. Now this one for project hello world applies to your entire project. The other one applies just to your module app, and this is your module app completely. You can have more than one module, in which case you will have more than one build.gradle file for each module over here. So for the project, if you open this file, you notice that there's a lot of stuff written inside. One of them would be the version of Gradle that you're using, which is right over here. The other settings like this repositories, which says JCenter at two different places, talks about where to fetch dependencies from, which would be Maven Central repository called JCenter. Let's go to the other Gradle file, which is build.gradle for your app, that's for your module app. And here there are some important settings. Now if you go to Google and if you type Android Studio project structure or creating your project, you are taken to this article which is under develop, under training, where you say create an Android project. They say Android Studio uses Gradle to compile and build your app. There's a build.gradle for the entire project as well as each module, and here there are some settings. Like take a look at this one that says compile SDK version 23. Now this indicates the version against which you want to compile, which is the platform version. By default, this is set to the latest version of Android available. Your app will still run on older devices, but you must set this to the latest value so that you can always take advantage of your app to run it on the latest platforms. The next important setting here is inside default config, which is called the application ID, which as you guess is the package name of your application. The two other values, one of them being min SDK version that says 15 and target SDK version that says 23, would be the minimum version on which you want to run your app and the maximum version on which you want to run your app. Now this place here at the bottom that is called dependencies is often the area where you'll be working regularly. This is where you add libraries that you want to use in your app, and we'll be covering how to add our own libraries over here as we start working with our apps. The next file that we discuss is Android manifest.xml, which is under this manifest folder here. Now, if you take a look at this file, this is what your Android considers or consults before installing your app on the phone. So it's very important that this file is properly configured. Here you simply specify the name of your activity like you see over here by saying activity name, then your package name which is given at the top over here, and other settings, whether you want to support right to left language, what is the label of your app, which is the app name as you'll notice over here, the launcher icon which is mentioned over here, and other details. Now if you want to know more about this file, check this link under API guides app manifest that covers the exact details of this. Once we start working with apps and write some code, we will explore these files in more detail. So coming to the left folder here called layout, this is where your user interface stuff goes. And notice that it has some controls like relative layout, text view. We'll be covering these widgets as they are called as we go in the further videos. Text view simply displays a line of text. As you notice, it can display multiple lines as well if your text is a paragraph instead of a single line. Relative layout is something called a view group, and we'll be discussing this in detail. If you go to the code folder here, which is your package io.designcoder.hello world, you have your class myActivity. Now this is where your Java classes and packages go. So here there's our myActivity, which inside which we have some code written. It extends an app compat activity for starters. We'll discuss what this app compat activity does, and notice that there is this method called onCreate where we have this method called set content view that is getting called, inside which we first took our string and try to display that inside a toast message. Other than that, inside values there is this file called colors.xml which lets you define colors. Let me show you what I mean. If you go to the layout file here, let's take our text view and try to give it a background color over here. In fact, let's give the background color to this item view group. I say background here and I simply say #ff0. I think that's a yellow color for the background. Take a look at that. Now I don't have to write ff0 over here. I can put that inside my colors.xml by going here and simply saying color, name is say yellow, and write #FF0 over here. Once I've done that, I could go to activity_my and I can go here, say @color. Notice that I'm not using @string anymore. I use @color / and I can say yellow over here. So that's how I'll be storing all the colors that I use everywhere in my app. So coming to your file here called diamonds.xml, that lets you define dimensions. Like it's a 16 dp over here, and this value is used inside activity_my over there. Other than that, there is styles.xml, which is similar to CSS if you're familiar with HTML, CSS stuff, where you can define a style for each widget and customize it further. So to give you an overview of the complete video, inside your package over here, you'll be storing code. Inside your manifest, you'll be configuring what items are present in your app, that is activities, services, broadcast receivers, content providers, what permissions your app needs, and what permissions others need from your app. Other than that, inside this folder called test, you'll be running tests over here. As you notice, this application test that extends. Now we won't be running testing in our current code, so this folder is not going to be used. There's a drawable folder here that contains icons and other types of drawables which we'll be covering up. And there's layout that contains your user interface. There's map that contains your launcher icon specifically, nothing else. There's values that contains colors with all your color definitions inside. Diamonds that contains dimensions over there. There is strings.xml that contains the text that you need. There is your styles.xml that contains the styles that you define for either your entire application or each particular widget. Other than that, there is your build.gradle for the entire project that has Gradle settings everywhere. There is build.gradle just for your app that contains the list of libraries that you need to work with, the minimum version on which your app is going to run, the current or maximum version on which you plan to run your app. And other than that, there is a version number of your app itself, which is 1.0 by default. And there are some other files that we'll be discussing later. So this covers the structure of the Android Studio project in a rough high level. As we go further, we need to dig deeper into each of these files to figure out what and how to use them. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a nice day.